The words hit me like a slap. You were just temporary. He said it like he was reciting the weather forecast, cool, unaffected, while standing under a flower-drenched arch at the altar. The wedding guest chuckled, thinking it was part of a joke, maybe a line from a rom-com speech. But I knew better. He looked me straight in the eye as he said it. The child I had raised, nursed through fevers, fought school bullies for baked birthday cakes from scratch. For 10 straight years, stood before me in a tuxedo and shredded 30 years of motherhood in one sentence. His real mother clutched his arms, smirking like she'd won some prize. My husband, his father, was conveniently absent from the whole thing. I was not supposed to come to the wedding. I had received no invitation, only a forwarded email chain from an old friend. Look who's finally getting married. Big surprise. Guess who's officiating? His real mom. My hands shook as I read it. I'd known about her return for months, of course, but I didn't think he'd throw me away like that. At the reception, while everyone clinked champagne glasses and toasted their perfect little reunion, I sat frozen. It wasn't the insult that undid me, it was the realization that they'd planned it all without me. As if I had never mattered. As if I had only ever been a stand-in. The DJ started playing a mother-son dance, but it wasn't me he took to the floor. It was her. He didn't even glance my way. That's when something inside me cracked. Not from sadness, from clarity. He thought I was temporary. He was about to find out just how permanent I could be. I wasn't always this silent woman standing in the shadows at someone else's celebration. Once I had dreams that stretched taller than any man's ego. A teaching career I loved. A studio apartment where the sun hit just right in the morning. Friends who laughed with me, not at me. I gave it all up the day I married Robert. He came with a son, Evan, barely 3 years old, and trembling with wide, mistrustful eyes at the courthouse when we signed the papers. His biological mother, Marlena, had taken off 6 months earlier. No word, no visits. Just a messy custody battle where the judge declared her unfit and handed the child to Robert with a grim sigh and a warning about attachment issues. Robert had no clue what to do with a toddler. He was a man used to boardrooms, not bedtime stories. He shoved the responsibility into my lap within weeks, always saying, "You're just so much better at the emotional stuff, honey." And I was. I held Evan through night terrors. I sat on the bathroom floor with him when he had the stomach flu and cleaned up after him when Robert couldn't stomach the mess. I read the same bedtime story, Goodnight Moon, until I could recite it by heart. I made up lullabies and stitched his Halloween costumes by hand. I took him to every doctor's appointment, every parent-teacher conference. I taught him how to tie his shoes, how to write thank you notes, how to treat people with kindness. For years he called me Mom, but never in front of Robert. Let's not confuse things, Robert had said once in that controlling while smiling tone of his. You're not his real mother after all. That was the first crack in the wall. I ignored it. Then Marlena returned. It started small, an email to Robert just checking in. A voicemail with a suspiciously remorseful tone. Robert, always craving admiration, ate it up. I could see it in the way he started dressing nicer, working out again, talking more about the old days. When I asked him if they were speaking, he lied. Poorly. I didn't push. I had already learned the penalty for being the nagging wife. Silence. Distance. Cold shoulders that could last weeks. Then came the birthday dinner when everything shifted. Evan had just turned 16. We threw him a party at a local bowling alley. I spent all morning decorating the space with streamers, picking up his favorite cake, red velvet with cream cheese frosting, and organizing a group of friends to surprise him. It was perfect. Or it should have been. Halfway through the party, Marlena walked in. She wore a tight red dress and heels that didn't belong anywhere near a bowling lane. Every head turned. She strode across the room like she'd never abandoned her son, like she hadn't disappeared for over a decade. Evan's face lit up. He ran to her. They hugged for an uncomfortably long time. And when they pulled apart, he whispered something in her ear that made her throw her head back and laugh. Robert just stood there beaming. I was invisible. That night I asked him why he hadn't told me she'd be there. He shrugged. She's his real mother, Claire. She has a right to be in his life. But I've been in his life for 13 years, I snapped. Where was she when he cried himself to sleep for 3 months straight? When he broke his arm, when he had night terrors? Don't be so dramatic, Robert said. You act like you're his only parent. I stared at him. It was the first time I truly saw it. The lines that had been carved into our marriage by years of quiet dismissal, emotional neglect, and subtle rewrites of history. From then on, it was a slow erasure. Evan stopped calling me Mom, just stopped one day like the word had expired. He said Claire instead, his voice flat, awkward. He stopped leaving notes on the fridge when he went out, stopped hugging me goodnight. By the time he turned 20, he had moved out without telling me. Robert claimed he wanted his space. I knew better. Marlena had gotten inside his head. Or maybe Robert had helped her. They were good at rewriting things, and I had let them thinking my love and loyalty would anchor Evan to me forever. But the wedding invitation that never came, that was the final slap. So I attended anyway. I wore a deep blue dress, understated but elegant, not the mourning color they probably expected. I smiled politely. I brought a thoughtful gift. I even hugged Evan when he walked by, and he gave me the barest acknowledgement in return. I was going to let it all go, until he looked me in the eye and said I was just temporary. Until Marlena raised her glass and toasted to the real parents who made this man what he is today. Until Robert leaned in during the speeches and muttered, "Don't make a scene." Scene. Oh, sweetheart, I didn't need a scene. I had something far more powerful. Because while they were busy rewriting the past, I had kept records of everything, years of text messages, receipts, school paperwork, health documents, even custody filings and insurance forms, all with my name on them, all legally binding. And I had recently discovered something that none of them knew. Evan wasn't Robert's biological son, not legally, and Marlena. Her parental rights had never been reinstated by the court. Legally, I was the only one who had ever officially applied for guardianship after Marlena disappeared. Robert had defaulted on the paperwork during one of his many midlife crises. The court had quietly stamped my name as primary guardian when Evan was 4. No one followed up. No one contested it. Not even Marlena. And now as I sat in that reception hall watching my so-called son waltz with the woman who'd abandoned him, I realized I still had leverage. Not for control, but for justice. They wanted to pretend I was temporary. I was going to show them what a temporary woman could do when she finally decided she was done being erased. The thing about being overlooked for so long is that you start to see things others miss. People forget to whisper around you. They get sloppy. They leave things unsaid, assuming you're too fragile, too small, too irrelevant to notice. But I noticed everything. I saw the way Marlena would accidentally leave receipts face up from designer boutiques when she was supposedly broke. The way Robert would come home from golf smelling faintly of perfume and satisfaction. The way Evan slowly began parroting Robert's tone, his disdain, his subtle little digs. I didn't lash out. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, I started keeping files. It began innocently, at least, that's what I told myself. I dug through old boxes to find Evan's school paperwork, his pediatrician records, immunization charts. My name, Claire Richardson, was always there, signed under guardian. Robert never even showed up to most appointments, too busy with work or trying to land this deal. I kept the emails too. The ones from his elementary school principal thanking me for always showing up. The speech therapist's progress reports. The therapist bills, all paid from my account. There were even old notes Evan had written, Mother's Day cards with crayons, awkward birthday letters in his teenage handwriting, all calling me Mom. I scanned them all. I backed them up. And most importantly, I found the court documents. They were buried deep in a fireproof box in the attic. A forgotten copy of the emergency guardianship approval from a judge when Marlena skipped town. It was supposed to be temporary, but no one ever challenged it. Robert never followed up with legal steps to reclaim it. Evan was too young to know. And now Evan was an adult. But the paper trail didn't vanish just because they wanted to rewrite history. I spent the next month after the wedding going over everything. I hired a family law attorney, not to sue, not yet, but to review what rights I still had. The lawyer, a woman named Elena, was sharp and just as furious as I was when I explained everything. You did the emotional labor, the caregiving, the nurturing, and now they want to erase you, I nodded. Let's make sure they can't, she said. The thing was, I didn't want to take Evan to court. I wasn't looking to hurt him directly, but I also wasn't about to let them parade around rewriting the past and leaving me as a footnote. Elena helped me quietly file for a petition of recognition of de facto parentage, citing years of evidence, witnesses, and documentation. I know he's an adult, she said, but you have every right to protect your legal standing, and frankly, this could protect you financially too. It wasn't just about identity. Robert and Marlena were planning something, I could feel it. They'd whispered too loudly at the wedding. Something about inheritance, about property transfers. And I knew Robert had been moving assets around behind my back. He thought I wouldn't notice that the joint savings account had been drained by $30,000. He thought I didn't recognize the shell company name on the monthly statements. He thought I wouldn't understand what he was doing, rewriting the family tree just in time for some quiet legal shifts. But I'd been watching, and now I had Elena. I want to go further, I told her one day, setting a thick manila folder on her desk. What's this? Everything I said. Proof of Robert's financial misconduct, Marlena's fraud, and something else. Inside were copies of Robert's text messages to Marlena, messages I'd pulled from an old iPad he'd forgotten to unlink. He never was good with tech. There were months of chats. Flirtation at first, then planning, then this. We'll transfer the house to Evan. Once Claire's out of the picture, it's clean. You're still legally his mother. She's just the stand-in. No one will question it. Don't worry, she won't fight, she never does. I stared at those words for hours the night I found them. She won't fight. He was right about one thing I hadn't. For years I took the quiet road. I swallowed my pride. I let myself believe that being good would eventually mean being valued. But now I was done being good. While Elena built the legal case, I began building something else, a message. Not to Evan, not yet, but to the world. I started writing. Just a little at first. A blog post about blended families. Then another one about invisible motherhood, the kind that doesn't come with birth certificates or family portraits. The kind that does all the work and gets none of the credit. It caught fire. Women began writing to me. Dozens, then hundreds. They shared stories of being stepmothers, foster parents, grandmothers, aunts raising children who eventually turned their backs when real parents showed up again. I didn't sign the blog with my full name, just CR. But one day I received a message in my inbox with no subject line. The sender, Evan, I think I know who you are. And if I'm right, we need to talk. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. He knew, or at least he suspected. I hadn't expected him to find the blog. I hadn't expected him to care. But part of me hoped desperately that the boy I raised was still in there. That he remembered the nights I stayed up with him after nightmares. That he remembered how I used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" every time he got sick. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I forwarded the message to Elena. Let him stew, she said. We're almost ready. Because while I was building the emotional case, Elena had filed a lis pendens on the house, effectively freezing any property transfer attempts. Robert wouldn't be able to sell or move ownership without court approval. He was furious. He left me voicemails, rage-filled, ugly things. But he knew better than to say anything incriminating. He always stopped short. Marlena tried to contact me next. She sent flowers, then an email. Let's talk, for Evan's sake. I deleted it. They had made it clear I was temporary. But they were about to learn that temporary people don't disappear. We evolve. We come back stronger. And this time, I wasn't just coming back for closure. I was coming for justice. It had been nearly 3 months since the wedding. 3 months of silence from Evan after that cryptic email. 3 months since Robert's last sputtering voicemail threatening to expose me for something he couldn't quite name. 3 months since Marlena tried her half-hearted olive branch cloaked in guilt and thinly veiled pity. In that silence I grew sharper. Not bitter, never bitter. I didn't let myself be consumed by it. Instead, I rebuilt quietly, like a woman sharpening blades behind a curtain. Elena and I met weekly. She was relentless in filing motions, gathering affidavits from neighbors, teachers, family, friends. People who had seen me raise Evan, people who remembered how Marlena had vanished without a trace. Some of them were shocked to learn Marlena had returned at all. Others admitted they'd always felt something was off about Robert and his versions of the past. People like him, Elena, told me they rely on everyone else staying quiet. You're not quiet anymore. And she was right. I had nothing left to lose. I returned to teaching. Just part-time at first, helping with writing workshops at the local community center. It felt like breathing again, like stretching limbs I hadn't used in years. The women in my workshops gravitated to me. Divorced, widowed, overlooked. We shared coffee stories, pain. They didn't know all of mine, not yet, but their recognition was enough. It was the first time in years I felt truly seen. It helped me reclaim myself. I stopped dressing like the ghost of a suburban housewife. I chopped my hair short, a sharp bob with streaks of silver I no longer bothered to hide. I invested in a new wardrobe, not flashy, just me. Structured, strong, understated. The kind of clothes a woman wears when she no longer needs to ask for respect. And then one evening, Evan showed up. I had just locked up the community center and was walking to my car when I saw him standing beside it, hands in his pockets, suit jacket draped over his shoulder, nervous. He looked like Robert in the face, but the hesitation, that was all me. Claire, he said. Not Mom, not Miss Richardson, but not the cold Claire he'd tossed around at the wedding either. I didn't answer. I opened my car door. Please, he said, voice cracking slightly. I need to talk. I shut the door but didn't get in. You get 10 minutes, I said. Don't waste them. He looked relieved, which annoyed me more than I wanted to admit. I read all of it, he said. The blog, every post. I knew it was you. I didn't know how to say anything after that. I stayed quiet. I didn't mean what I said at the wedding, he added quickly. The temporary thing. I was trying to be funny. Nervous, I guess. You thought cutting me down in front of 200 people was a joke, I asked. He flinched. No. I was angry, he admitted. At you, at Dad, at Marlena. I didn't know who to trust anymore. I felt like my life had been scripted by everyone but me. I finally looked him in the eyes. You were angry. And instead of asking questions, you chose the person who abandoned you over the person who never left. He swallowed hard. I know. Do you? I asked, stepping closer. Do you know what it's like to raise a child who isn't biologically yours and still love them with every breath in your body? Do you know what it's like to have that child look at you like a stranger because someone whispered poison in their ear? I was wrong, he said, his voice breaking. That's when I saw it, not just guilt but shame. Real shame. I didn't even want the house, he said. It was all Marlena and Dad. They wanted it transferred before the new fiscal year. Something about taxes. I didn't care. But when I tried to back out, Dad said I owed him. Said I was being ungrateful. I shook my head. You don't owe him anything, or her. But you do owe me something. He nodded. Anything. I don't want an apology, Evan. I want action. Public, real acknowledgement of the truth. Not for pity, but because I won't be erased. His posture straightened. Okay, then let's do it. The next day, Evan posted an open letter on his social media. He didn't name names, but he didn't have to. Anyone who'd been at the wedding knew. He wrote about the woman who raised him, who taught him empathy, who sacrificed more than he'd ever realized. He called her his real mother, not in blood, but in soul. He wrote about betrayal, guilt, and the process of unlearning lies told by people he trusted. He ended it with this. If you're reading this and you've ever had a temporary parent, maybe ask yourself what that word even means. Because the woman who showed up for me, she was permanent, even when I pretended she wasn't. The post went viral. Strangers messaged me. Former students, neighbors, even teachers from Evan's childhood. I got flowers, emails. One woman sent me a hand-stitched quilt with a note for the mothers who stay, even when no one thanks them. Robert, of course, was livid. He tried to threaten a defamation suit. Elena shut him down within a day. Marlena tried a public response too, but it backfired. The internet doesn't have patience for parents who abandon their children and then try to reclaim the spotlight. Her interviews dried up. Her Instagram lost thousands of followers. Brands backed out of deals. As for the house, the court sided with me, with evidence of Robert's financial misconduct and attempts to mislead about asset ownership. The judge froze the property in my name indefinitely. He appealed. He lost. And with that loss came another. The company he had invested in using Evan's name as a proxy was audited. Turns out temporary mothers can be terrifying when pushed too far. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just the woman behind the scenes. I was the one they remembered, the one they respected, the one they finally saw. And Evan? He never called me Claire again. He calls every Sunday now. Sometimes he even comes by. We're not where we used to be, but we're not where we were. And that's enough. Because this time I didn't have to prove my worth. They did. 6 months passed. 6 months since the wedding, since the apology, Since the world finally remembered the woman who had once folded herself into someone else's family only to be cast aside like furniture when the original owner came back. But I didn't spend those months basking in some warm, redemptive glow. I spent them rebuilding, quietly, fiercely. I converted the guest room into an office, my office. Not Robert's study, not Evan's old room filled with memories I no longer trusted. Mine. I painted the walls a deep, stormy blue, filled the shelves with books I'd always meant to read, framed old photos of myself before I'd become just Robert's wife or Evan's stepmom. Photos of me at 22 barefoot in Italy, of me at 30 arms crossed in front of a protest sign. I had lived an entire life before them, and I was done pretending I hadn't. My blog exploded. Not because I was famous, but because my words had tapped into something ancient and raw, women who had raised children that didn't belong to them by blood, only to be told their love was less real. Women who had made sacrifices so quiet, so constant, that even their own families forgot them. I started getting invitations, podcasts, interviews, panels, but it wasn't until one night sitting alone at my kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm tea that the final twist fell into my lap. It came in the form of a manila envelope. No return address, hand-delivered. Inside was a DNA test. I froze. The name on the top, Evan Richardson. The name below it, Robert Richardson. Alleged father. The result, 0% probability. My breath caught. I flipped through the rest of the paperwork, hands trembling. A post-it note was stuck to the final page in messy, masculine handwriting. You were more of a parent to him than I ever was. Now I know why. No signature, but I recognized the handwriting. It was from Robert's brother Darren, the black sheep of the family who had disappeared from our lives 2 decades ago after a mysterious falling out with Robert. I hadn't seen him since Evan was 4. My mind raced, connecting dots I hadn't known were dots at all. The way Robert had resented Evan even while trying to control him. The way Darren had always seemed too interested in Evan's well-being before he vanished. The whispered rumors, the tension whenever his name came up. I pulled out an old photo, one I hadn't looked at in years. Evan, age 5, holding Darren's hand at a family picnic, both of them smiling with that same crooked dimple on the left cheek. My knees went weak. Robert had known, or at least suspected, and instead of facing the truth, he did what cowards do, buried it under control, manipulation, revisionist history. And when Marlena returned, he saw a chance to rewrite everything to pretend none of it had happened. No wonder he wanted me out of the picture. No wonder Evan had never felt fully his. I sat in silence for a long time. Then I picked up my phone. I called Evan. He answered on the first ring. Hey, he said. Everything okay? Do you remember Uncle Darren, I asked, voice careful. A pause. Yeah, kind of. I always liked him. Do you remember why he stopped coming around? Another pause. Dad said he moved, some falling out. Why? I told him. Everything. I read him the results. The note. I told him about the photo, about the timeline, about my suspicions. I didn't cushion it. I didn't dramatize it. When I finished, Evan was quiet for a long time. I always wondered, he said finally. I never felt like Dad saw me, not really. You were never the problem, I said. He let out a long, shaking breath. What do we do now, he asked. We tell the truth, I said. Together we drafted a statement. Evan released it through his blog, a continuation of the one that had gone viral before. He didn't accuse, he didn't dramatize. He simply said he had learned something unexpected about his origins, and that it only deepened his gratitude for the woman who had raised him. He ended it with this: sometimes the people who raise you aren't the ones who create you. Sometimes they're the ones who save you. Claire saved me, and nothing about my DNA could ever change that. The fallout came quickly. Robert lost what little sympathy he had left. Marlena tried to spin it as her own tragedy, but no one bought it. Darren surprisingly reached out to both of us. He wasn't looking to be a father, just to make peace. He apologized for staying silent. He admitted he'd suspected but had been too afraid to confirm it. But none of that really mattered anymore, because I had already let go. Not of Evan, not of the years I gave, but of the need for validation. I didn't need Evan's biology to define me. I had been his mother long before the world caught up. And I had finally learned to be mine too. 1 month later, I sold the house, not in spite, in freedom. I moved into a smaller place near the lake, with big windows, with light. And one quiet Sunday morning, Evan showed up with a suitcase. I need a few days, he said, to clear my head. I nodded. He stepped inside. He looked around. Then he smiled. Feels like home, he said softly. And for the first time in a long, long time, I let it.